Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Catholic Libertarian podcast. Another episode of Book Club today. I'm sitting down with Matt Erickson of King Pill to talk about The Machiavellians by James Burnham. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
No problem. I gotta say, you have my favorite background / like studio of everyone in the podcasting game right now. I absolutely love everything. The K, the two lights on each side. It's phenomenal. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The goal was to. It's like we're not red. We're not, there's red and there's blue, kind of we're neither one. What it is you put the two of them together and it's purple, which goes with the royal for the king. Yeah. Like that was kind of the idea with it.
I thought about doing purple myself, but I could not get like a good purple where it didn't look like too pinkish.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
I'm just gonna go with the blue for now so I can buy some better lights.
Yeah, it looks good.
So we're gonna talk about The Machiavellians by James Burnham. I can always forget how to pronounce his name. You recommended it on Pete Quinones show, Free Men Beyond the Wall. I started reading it right then because that podcast was incredible. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you.
I gotta say, huge fan. I don't agree with you on everything. I'm still technically, I think I'm part of Mises Caucus still. I gave him money one time, but I still, every time you go live, I'm like right there. You got me reading Mince's Modebug, and he's also incredible. So
good. I'm glad. That's good to hear.
So The Machiavellians is how did you first hear about the book? Like, how did you find out about it?
Oh, I gotta say, I was going to say it was from Moldbug, but I don't think it was because I think I read the Machiavellians before I read Moldbug. Someone talked about it. Someone referenced it. It might have been in the old part of the Problem Inner Circle Facebook group. That might have been where I first heard about it. I heard a few different people kind of batting it around, and one of the people I heard said something like it's hard for me to take your opinions on politics seriously if you haven't read the Machiavellians, because it just opens up a whole new world of it's like political science is what it is. It opens up a whole new world that people don't ever really think about, and a lot of it is very, very obvious stuff. But you just kind of, for whatever reason, we've been kind of conditioned not to think about it. So I heard someone referenced it and said it was really good. And particularly what was interesting is they mentioned James Burnham, the author, who was a former Trotskyist. Yeah. He was a close follower of Trotsky through the 1920s and into the 1930s. And then he became a conservative. He actually wrote for National Review for a while, which National Review was an organization of Trotskyists early on. So that wasn't an unnatural match. But he ended up writing. He became an anti-Marxist. He was a staunch anti-communist his entire life after that. So he wrote this book in like 1940 or 1941, which is interesting then because this is basically pre-World War. Like he references the War of 1914. He doesn't say World War I. So this is pre-World War II. So that was very interesting to me because I just at that time was studying the kind of the early years, the formation of the CIA. And with the Dulles brothers is a really good book, bonus book, Dulles brothers. It's called The Brothers, I think, by Stephen Kinzer, about Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles. It's a very, very good book. So I was just studying that era. And so to have a guy who began as a Trotskyist and then wound up a conservative, specifically a conservative that made these sorts of really insightful, reactionary observations about politics, I had to read it. And once I did, it's like, there was like the part of my life before I read the Machiavellians and then the part of my life after it. And that will forever be the part that splits my life in half.
Yeah. For me, that book is Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard.
Yeah.
That was my book. I read that one and I'm just like, okay, well, everything I knew was wrong. Got to start over.
Right.
Machiavellians didn't have that strong of effect, but it definitely made me rethink. It took things you already kind of knew about politics, but really kind of like hits you with something. You're like, hey, he's not, he's right. He's right. You kind of think this in the back of your head, but he really, when you read it, you're like, oh, fuck, why did I notice this already?
Right. Yeah. It's like I was aware of that phenomenon, but nobody had ever like consolidated it into a specific concept with a specific name and then described it as like a law. Once that happens, once that clicks for you and you really kind of embody that sort of observation, then for me, it just completely changes the way that I look at political strategy, at social organization. I mean, just to give you an idea of how profoundly this book affected me, I've been someone who's been kind of starting to get to know the Eastern Orthodox Church lately. And this is from someone who grew up very extremely Protestant. My family are all basically Reformed right now. And so there's some very, very huge, sharp differences between those. And it was reading this book actually on politics that made me see the world so differently that it was kind of like the first step in the process toward leading me toward orthodoxy. So that's how significant of an impact this book had on me.
No, yeah. As someone who's Catholic, and my family was all Protestant, they're all hardcore Pentecostal, Holy Spirit on the ground dancing kind of thing, one around like Super Mario trying to fly. Going from that to Catholic, I absolutely get that. There's a big divide there.
Right.
Now, Eastern Orthodox. Now, I love Eastern Orthodox. I have some friends who are Eastern Orthodox. I love Aristotle, but I love Plato more. And so Eastern Orthodox really is. Have you read The Cave in the Light by?
I haven't.
Oh, you got to. No. It's absolutely incredible. It's a history of Aristotle and Plato all the way to Western civilization.
Ooh.
It goes, it goes over Augustine, Aquinas. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's one of my favorite books. I'm going through it for like the second time now. It's phenomenal.
Oh, Arthur Herman?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. I wrote it down here.
It's a good book. If you finish it and want to talk about it, I'd love to have you on again and talk about it because it's
deal. Let's do it.
Awesome. Machiavellians. The point about political science. One of the things he said was there were two nations that came to the same conclusion. They had no trade, no connection between each other. It must be a political law. People don't want to think of like political law or economic law as like legit sayings because it's like, oh, it involves people and people are too varied. But that's so really ridiculous. Like we know economic law is the same, so why can't political law be the same system? We know you get the elites in one place. You know what's going to happen. You know how it's going to play out. Like that. When he said that, it really made me think, okay, so political science isn't this nonsense, leftist controlled dogma like Michael Knowles and these other conservatives talk about. It's like it's a legit thing, and I need to actually study it a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I've visualized it is like studying like a colony of ants or a hive of bees. You would look at them and you would say, when you surveyed them, you wouldn't think of them from the perspective of, now what should this bee do? You don't really think that way. You just ask, what does this bee do? And when you look at politics that way, you have to be careful because depersonalizing yourself from something that involves people can be that can lead you down some ugly pathways. But that doesn't remove the truth of these observations. That if you look at the political system and you view human beings as animals who are acting instinctively as animals do, who are naturally following incentives, you can derive from that what are effectively laws. Now, I mean, when we say it's a law, we're not saying this is a law like gravity, but we're saying it's a law in that 99.999% of the time, it will follow this way. Like there may be an exception, but that's the exception that proves the rule. This is the rule. So an example would be Robert Mikel's Iron Law of Oligarchy, which is it states basically that no matter what your social political organization, no matter how the society is laid out, it will always be controlled by an oligarchy. There will always be a small group of people with wealth and power who wield disproportionate effect over everybody else, and they'll basically direct the movement of the society. So when you have those things, when you take that, it doesn't mean okay, well, just there's no point in ever fighting for anything anymore or something. Like people will take it and take this as to be like a really defeatist thing, and it's not. What it's doing is it's identifying the nature of the territory. You don't just want to, if your politics and war are on a continuum, you don't want to engage in a war blindly. You want to survey the continuum. You want to send your scouts out. You want to have, aerial photography. You want to bring your specialists in, your experts in the local territory, and have them give you the breakdown on what the soil is like, or you want to get as granular as you possibly can as you're preparing for a battle. And that's what the Machiavellians do. They remove the ethical and moral language from the political system, so they can just view it objectively. Now, they don't make prescriptions based on, abandoning ethics and morals. What they're doing is they're trying to get a feel for the lay of the land. Once you get a feel for the lay of the land, that can then inform how you actually proceed. If you know that, for instance, a revolution is never the people overthrowing the elites. That's the story that's told later on, because that becomes the new, here's another word, political formula that new elite class uses to govern that society. They say, we are the people who overthrew the past elites. But that makes us the elites now. And then everybody else, the masses will all follow the minority, the oligarchic group that directs the rest of the society. So they coined this new political formula, which is like a mythology that everyone in that society embodies. You know, we're patriots. That's a mythology that everyone wants to buy in. I want to be a patriot. I want to be a patriot. Well, what does being a patriot mean?
I want to be a hero for the cause of liberty. You know,
exactly,
I want to be a hero for the cause of liberty. And it's like, well, Paul Revere was, and all he did was ride a horse. To then be lower some expectations or understand not everyone can do that.
Right. Well, and how many times have you heard a story like that, where it's like there's these mythologic stories that everyone, you can just say one word, like Paul Revere, everyone knows that story right away, right offhand. It's a crucial story that we all learned growing up. I'm not saying in this case with Paul Revere, but in general, how many times have you had a story like that? And so one day you come across someone who says, did you know that that's actually not how it really happened? It was actually right. It's just this there's tons of points where this will happen to you throughout your life. Where you'll realize that the story that you were told wasn't exactly the actual truth. It was maybe based on a true story, but it was kind of updated and tweaked to make it sexier, to make it sell an idea. And that idea is always, as the Machiavellians point out, that idea is always going to be something non-rational. It's not going to be logical, because human beings are not rational, logical creatures. First and foremost, we're emotional, instinctive creatures. And then our rationality, our reason kicks in to justify the decisions that we just made. So that's especially on a group scale. Human beings and groups, a group of humans is a completely different entity than a single human. The larger the group gets, the dumber it gets. Like everyone reverts to the mean IQ. And yeah, go ahead.
On that point of like a historical figures, and you confront it with the truth of it. I just went to recently. I just finished The Real Lincoln by Thomas De Lorenzo.
Yes.
And going from Lincoln, who was probably one of the most propagandized historical figures ever, and confronted with the reality of it, it's like, wow, the whole idea of like, I mean, here's how common it is, Honest Abe. You know, that is like a common expression. People, you can say Honest Abe, but everyone knows Lincoln. You know, and finally he was such a lying piece of shit, and he was just terrible. And you go from like, wow, everyone's example of a good president was garbage. It's really just mind. And then you confront, you bring to other people, and you're like, well, who are you to tell some new guy this? You know, you're some nobody. You're just some guy for Twitter now saying, hey, Lincoln wasn't that good.
Right.
It's one of the points of the Machiavellians that kind of like, I know I was reading it and I would blackpill me a little bit. Then I would I would have to confront that and go, hold on. So this idea like people don't want reason, people don't want truth, people don't want like there was section of Aristotle's first line metaphysics about people want knowledge. It's like you hear that like, well, that's a little bit of a black pill. People are stupid, but you still don't let like truths about human nature black pill. You should use that to figure out, okay, well, that's how it is. How do I adapt? How do I use this in my favor? You shouldn't take a black pill like that and go, okay, well, I'm giving up. You said, like you said, survey the land, get the information. And that's what the book does. It really does like, and for every black pill it gives you, it's a little bit of knowledge to help you out. And that's why it's just a phenomenal book. It really just hammers home like political reality. Hammers home political reality. And it just, it really does change your entire worldview looking at politics. Like I can't wait to go reread some historical or political accent. It's a new Machiavellian lens. You know, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
You'll start seeing then. You'll see how you'll get to where you can hear a story and you instantly can smell where that story just isn't. I understand what that story is doing. I know that story is not actually true. I know that they sold that story for a specific reason, and it's always like you said, it's to get people bought into it. Because the majority of people don't want to be told the truth. H.L. Mencken said the average man does not want liberty; he just wants security. He doesn't want freedom; he wants safety. People want to be safe. People will naturally follow strength. This is the way that societies end up developing, is that people follow strong leaders, and then they build themselves around an idea, and they create institutions to sustain that idea, to like make that idea permanent on the world. But then within an institution, here's an example. This is something not actually from this book, but it's the same kind of idea. It's called, I think it's Parnell's law of bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. And what it states is that within any bureaucratic organization, inevitably it will split into two broad groups. Mm-hmm. One group exists and works for the purpose of the institution. So if the institution was created for a specific reason, the group exists for that reason. The other group exists for the sake of the institution. So they're bought into the institution, not the purpose of the institution. And what the law says is that inevitably that second group will win. The second group always wins. The people who are just acting for the interests of the organization and not the reasons the organization was created. So when you—
I'm seeing that now with the Catholic Church.
Right,
exactly. I'm seeing that exactly. I gotta know more of these political laws kind of thing, because like once you hear them, you're like, oh, I see it there. You start to notice it. Like it really is like in the Matrix when you take the red pill, you see the codes. It's like that. You start just noticing it. Wow.
And you start feeling like you said, it can be blackpilling at first, because suddenly you feel like you're just a cog caught in a machine that's grinding ever forward without you, and there's nothing you can do about it. But for me, the thought that followed immediately on the heels of that one was, wait a second. Now there's fewer people that I have to be concerned about, because there's this idea that's baked into us as we're fundamentally liberals. We are, doesn't matter what your actual worldview is, you're a liberal today, because you've been cooked within a liberal stew. Liberalism is baked into you. I'm talking like classical liberalism, not Democrats, but classical liberalism.
Mises type of liberalism.
Right. Yes. Another one. The notion of democracy and freedom and the free will and the individual human soul, all these kinds of things are all liberal ideas that are completely baked into us. And because of that, then we look at politics as a democratic operation. We look at this as, okay, we need to get the majority of people bought into something.
Yes.
Like that should be the goal. Like you don't even consciously think about this. You're just like, we need to get 51% of people reading Rothbard.
I noticed that today. Like I was thinking about circulation of elite. So the ghost had been, even myself about circulation of elite, my subject was become an elite and then convert the elites. So I'm still even thinking of the circulation of elites, the democratic process.
Yes.
I hit me. I'm like, I'm still thinking into the ideas of democracy. 51% always wins. I reject democracy. So why do I keep trying to play into it?
Yes. That's exactly the point that I've been trying to communicate to libertarians, that you guys claim to reject democracy, yet you're thinking democratically. You're thinking like Democrats, like we need to convert people to our cause. We need to message to people and get them bought into our political cause. And that's how change happens. That's not how change happens. The political process, political parties are not for converting people to your cause. They're for taking power with people who already believe in an idea. They happen after the converting people. The converting people has to happen upstream from that. And then what happens is political parties get used. So they aren't actually winning power for themselves. They're winning power for the people who funded them. They're winning power for, in some cases, the people who are the figureheads of their movement. But very often, even those people end up being just puppets of the people who are ultimately the puppet masters completely behind the scenes. Those are the people who take power through politics. Politics will always ultimately follow downstream from the money. You have to follow the money. This is why the other show that I'm on, Wealth, Power, and Influence, this is why we talk about, this is what drives the society. It's wealth, power, and influence. Politics follows the money. If you want to change the politics, you got to change the money. And the best way to do that is to get yourself into the money. That's where things ultimately happen. So when I look at this idea that the majority of people don't want liberty, the majority of people don't care about the truth. People just want to have people like tell them sweet little lies that tickle their ears. That's what the majority of people follow. That shouldn't be blackpilling to you, because you're not a Democrat. You're not trying to democratically change the world. You're trying to change the world upstream from the political process. And all of those people now, instead of you having to reach each one of them and get them to read Rothbard and accept, the non-aggression principle, now you just have to put yourself in a position where those people will want to follow you. And then they will. They're programmable. You can program them to do what you want. You just have to understand what motivates and incentivizes them and then provide it to them.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Did you see Jack Dorsey tweeted out a link to Anatomy of the State? I got to know what to take on that, because he is an elite and he's bringing a philosophy to people, but he's just having them read something. Like, I don't know. I'm looking at him, like, I looked at it like yesterday, and I'm looking at it today after finishing Machiavellians, and I'm not sure how I interpret this. Because on one hand, he's an elite, but he's also inside the institutions that are fucking people over. And I'm not sure how he's a Bitcoin guy, but how much of his Bitcoin just owns self-preservation and actually helping people understand what Bitcoin is, you know? Like, I can't figure out what is the effect this is going to have, or if it's good or bad. What do you think? Have you have any idea on this? Or
I do. I have some strong feelings on it. And and I'll just say it the most provocatively way that I can, just to get people riled up. So I'll overstate my position, but I think that it's actually a bad thing. I think this is actively a bad thing for the cause of liberty, because what it's doing is it's reframing the conversation. It's taking the conversation and putting it out in a way that the libertarians are running around chasing it, trying to keep track of it, and they're the ones who are being led. So it's like a cat. Like, the cat might be really, really powerful and strong and stronger than its toy, but who's holding on to the toy and dragging it in front of the cat? So if we've accepted that the way that you change the society isn't trying to convert everybody into Rothbardians, then that kind of takes away some of the value. So now it's kind of like, okay, well, lots of people are going to hear about it. The vast majority of them aren't going to read it. Of the people who do read it, the vast majority are going to hate it. And you're going to awaken in them. Now they know who Rothbard is. Now there's new attack surface for going after you. Now they know the principles. Now they understand your goals. Now they understand your motivations. You can't hide in the shadows anymore. You're pulled out into the light. So what tools do you have at your disposal? What tools do you have to work with? What institutions do you control? Do you control Jack Dorsey, or does Jack Dorsey control you? So the libertarians aren't in a position of strength at any point along this process here. All it does is it just exposes them, drags them out into the light, and gets them reacting, and them trying to chase the narrative down, them trying to control it. And ultimately, they're chasing a narrative that's a ghost anyways. Because, like we said, you're not going to change the world by converting people into Rothbardians. You're going to change the world
by converting the Hoppians.
Exactly.
I mean,
I wish I would have said that. That was great. Right. Yeah. You're not going to convert people you're not going to change the world by converting people into Rothbardians. You're going to change the world by getting people to act like Rothbardians. And that's different. You don't need to convert them to Rothbard to get them to act like Rothbard. You just need to recognize that they're going to use whatever is most useful and most appealing to them. And you need to build that and give it to them. Put it in. Do you believe in the market? If you believe in the market, then you would provide something on the market for people to use. Because right now, the only thing available to people, if they're looking for straight statecraft services, is the existing regime. That's the only institution that's offering statecraft services. Now it's starting to abandon the state itself, the government institutions themselves, and the regime is starting to offer statecraft services through private organizations. And that's the other side of this. I predicted, Stephen and I on our show King Pilled, we predicted this 10 months ago. What we said is that a time was going to come when libertarians were going to start being used as useful idiots. Because what we're seeing is the privatization of tyranny. We're seeing the privatization of technocracy.
It's a private company, bro.
Exactly.
I mean, look at Cato. I mean, just recently, one of the guys from Reason Magazine tweeted out about like the defending the taking down of Rand Paul. Like, Rand Paul should have been taken down, maybe he should have, but its evidence on math was not clear. And one of the comments beneath it was from Neocon Remover. He said, "You claim to love the market, but you look at your likes. You have 0 likes. Maybe you should just delete your account." And it's like, I mean, the Beltway Cato type libertarians they really are used for idiots. I mean, it's a private company. I think you're kind of right when you say libertarian is an inherently sin ideology, because it doesn't place any morality in there. It simply places in there. I always say there's 2 kinds of morality. There's higher and lower. And the lower form of morality is you should be allowed to do something. Whether you're doing something that's good or bad, that's later determined. And so, yeah, low morality, people should be allowed to do prostitution. Higher morality, probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Private companies having the right to decide who can come in their store. Yes, that's fine. Them doing it at behest of the government on stupid reasons like vaccinations, not good. And people who are such beltway basic libertarians can't fucking get this.
Yes, that's a fantastic way of framing it. The way that I've framed it before is that basically that libertarianism, the way that it actually is functioning in the real world right now, it's basically like a suit that anybody can hop into and wear and take advantage of when it works in their favor. And that's how it ends up being used, because libertarianism doesn't have a clear praxis. It doesn't have a clear recommendation of how to act. It doesn't tell you how to act. It just tells you how not to act. You have to have something positive.
That's like one of the basic lines of human action. Human action is not concerned with men's why they act, but it's simply how they act. I think that's how it was phrased. I'm reading it now, and I should remember it better. But you're right. They don't really have a. I think libertarians devoid of moral framework of, because everyone has a god. Everyone worships a god. It's unavoidable. And if you make libertarianism your god instead of some kind of moral framework, you're going to get resulted in these really basic, stupid private company, bro. It's so. And someone who came to libertarianism from the Christian framework, it's like painfully obvious. And you see these atheist people out there like that, or agnostic people out there, or even ones who are Christian but don't really care too much about it. And it's just like you want to scream at them because it's so obvious and they're not getting it. It's like I'm a year into the philosophy. I've only been a libertarian for like 1 year.
Wow.
And I get this. I'm understanding it. People are like, I'm a second generation libertarian. I'm like, you're an idiot. What the fuck is this?
Well, that's where you've got people now who are. It's kind of like that Parnell's law of bureaucracy that I said. This applies outside of bureaucracies as well to some extent, because now you have people who are they're not acting. So libertarianism would be like an institution that is people attach themselves to the institution of libertarianism as an idea, and it's a tool. It's like a technology that people are trying to use, this set of ideas. And there's the end and then there's the means. So libertarianism is an end. It's something that you're trying to get to, but it's not a tool that will get you there. It's having libertarians act like libertarians doesn't get you to Ancapistan. In fact, it works directly against you, because when you act like a libertarian, you become a victim. You become a pawn or a something to be used by someone else. So what you get is, just in the same way that you get within an organization, you have people that are acting for the sake of the organization's purpose, and you have people who are acting for the sake of the organization. You now have people who are acting for the sake of libertarianism. They're trying to embody they want to be able to identify as a libertarian. So they're trying to act like a libertarian. Yes, exactly. They aren't actually focused on bringing about liberty or actually advancing liberty in any way. That's what they claim. That's the political formula that they follow. But their actual actions are to just try to signal, in-group signal to other libertarians that actually I'm a very, very good libertarian. You should respect me and give me a position of esteem within your circle. That's where the majority of libertarians are. That's why they can call themselves libertarians, but they're falling victim to that Parnell's law of bureaucracy. It's
like you're describing Archie Flower to a T here. It's like you're describing him exactly. That's his entire personality.
Yes, exactly.
Let me look for my notes here, because I think so I got a few more questions for you.
Yeah.
Because I think we're running out of our time here. But I'm having so much fun. I lost track of time a little bit.
Geez, that's been really fast.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I want to have you on again. Anytime you want to come on, I want you guys to set it up, because this has been a blast.
Yeah, totally.
You said earlier, people who, it's hard to take your opinion seriously if you haven't read the Machiavellians. What other books in the realm of politics would you say are similar to that? If you're going to get into politics, you're going to try to understand it. What books do you read along with the Machiavellians?
I would say the one I mentioned a minute ago, The Brothers, by Stephen Kinzer. Just because really what it is it's a book that covers the creation of the national security state and what I would say is any book that covers that, but that one's particularly good because it gives you a really good idea of the spirit of the national security state, which is once you understand the spirit of the movement or the organization, you can better project where it's going than if you just understand the exact mechanics of it. So there's that one. Another one's not necessarily political, but I think as you get deep enough into politics, you realize that politics and religion are the same thing. You're dealing with the same territory.
Statecraft has Soulcraft by George Will. Have you read that?
No, that's fantastic.
I cannot. George Will wrote a book called Statecraft Has Soulcraft, What Government Does. It's very conservative, but it's on really that's how some people view the government. They view it as statecraft, soulcraft. The government is to make you a better man.
Right. That's like the key idea of the Enlightenment. That's like the key takeaway of liberalism. And this is getting into the book I was going to say, which is Dominion by Tom Holland, which gives you the history of that's another one that will affect you like the Machiavellians, because it completely, for me at least, it completely reoriented my view of the political landscape today and showed me just how clearly we are all Christians and liberalism is a sect of atheist Christianity. And what we're watching happen today is a set of civil wars within Christianity, properly speaking. It's like, was it Nixon who said we're all Keynesians now? Yeah. We're all Christians now. Like that's how we are all descended from Christianity. We're operating within a Christian framework. It's the water that we all swim in. We all operate with a Christian morality.
I mean, the Catholic Church built Western civilization. Have you read that book by Tom Woods?
I've started it. Yeah.
I have it myself. I just finished it. It's really fucking good.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be cursy when talking about a Catholic book, but I mean, we all live in a Christian framework. To deny that is ridiculous. People say we don't live in a Christian nation or a Christian Western framework is beyond stupid to me. Look around you. It's everywhere.
The way you can prove that is that the people who criticize Christianity on Christian grounds. They say that Christians aren't Christian enough. That's their position, whether it's from the left or the right. That's the whole thing. So like the whole literally is like movement,
that's Sam Harris's whole stick.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the objective morality coming from science, moral landscape, phenomenal book. It's just like, hey, you want me to have objective morality? That's fine. Here's how you do it better. It really is coming at Christians from the Christian framework. That's a good point.
The whole idea of the democratic state, the cathedral that we have today, the whole purpose of it is to scientifically solve religion without God. The whole idea is it's all getting deeper and deeper into materialism, and it's so far into materialism that this is the progression of the Reformation. The Reformation is progressing deeper and deeper into materialism until it got to the point that it reformed God right out of the church. It's the whole Christian superstructure with no God. So what do? You're now atheists. All that exists is materialism. That is the material reality. We're all positivists. Math can explain everything. We can science the shit out of whatever we want, and we're going to science the shit out of a church. What is going to be our God, though? The God has to be, well, what's the base layer? Let's get to the very base layer. Well, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. So what he did is he made human consciousness the base layer. And then since then, progressing forward has been a never-ending process of trying to form the ideal individual. Like it's like an abstract archetype. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the ideal individual, which will be our God. And the role of the state will be like the church to craft people after the image of the ideal individual. It's the Christian church directly turned on its head. And I was just listening the other day. I'd said recently that on the Pete Q interview, I said that libertarianism is Christianity without Christ. And I was listening to Jonathan Pajot with the Symbolic World the other day, and someone asked him, said, could you define the Antichrist? Like, or symbolically, what would the Antichrist look like? And he kind of thought about it for a minute. And he said, well, like concisely, it would be, he gave the example of Judas, where Mary Magdalene came and had the jar of perfume and was washing Jesus' feet. And Judas stepped up and he said, oh, this is, she's sitting here venerating the Lord right in front of him. He's one of his closest apostles. She's venerating him. And he says, oh, we should have taken that, sold the perfume, and given the proceeds to the poor. That right there, he said, is the spirit of Antichrist. It's Christianity without Christ. And when he said that, Christianity without Christ, I was like, oh shit, libertarianism is the Antichrist.
I hate the Antichrist.
Yeah.
No, I have this joke. I have this joke that's not really a joke because it's kind of true. Is that everything I hate about everything that's terrible going on, you can blame on the Reformation, John Calvin, and Martin Luther.
Yes.
Everything you can trace back public education, compulsory schooling, all from the Enlightenment, all to the Reformation. And there's this point Ayn Rand made. I'm a huge fan of Ayn Rand. I know most people hate her, but as someone who I absolutely love her, I think she gets everything. Oh, she's very close. I mean, she has that whole thing about before you can say I love you, you have to say the I. Place yourself before others. People reject that, but Christ said in second greatest commandment is love others as thyself.
Yes.
So you have to. So there is a connection there. Yes. Yeah. So my joke has been, Rand had this point about there's always a tiller and a witch doctor. You know, you always have the strong power guy, the guy with the philosophy. And for the longest time, that was government and Catholic Church. You know, you look through all history, you see that. And around the 20th century of America, we swapped it. The church was rotated out for the colleges and the elite. Look at Woodrow Wilson being the new pope, an example. He was a professor who became president. He was the new pope. And you really see this, like there was a switching of elites from Catholic people and religious doctrines to secularism and materialism. And we can really just trace everything back from there to the Reformation to everything being bad because of Martin Luther. It's really all connected to that one dude.
It's funny. I tweeted the other day a poll. I said, who was more evil? I don't remember exactly. Who was more evil, Hitler or Kant? And or I said, which German was more evil, Hitler or Kant? And then, so just as you were starting to say that, I was thinking Kant won too. And just as I was saying that, I should do Kant and Luther. Or maybe I should do Luther and Hitler.
No, Critique of Pure Reason was the first philosophical book I ever read. And I thought I was an idiot because I couldn't read it. And I realized Kant was also an idiot because that book's impossible to read. It is. Have
you listened to Lord of Spirits at all?
I've not. Is that the Orthodox Bible podcast, or am I seeing something else? Yeah. It's I have heard of it. Priests. I haven't started yet.
It's absolutely phenomenal. I think half their audience, at least half their audience, is not Orthodox. They're because what they're doing is they're basically kind of exploring the mystical realm. They're looking at the spiritual world the way a Second Temple Jew would have looked at the spiritual world, and then they're describing the Bible from that perspective. Which Eastern Orthodoxy. That's basically their Eastern Orthodox Church sees themselves as the direct ideological descendants of the Second Temple Jews, and that like Paul didn't see himself as a convert. Paul saw himself as continuing he didn't see himself as founding a new church. He saw himself as continuing in the same footsteps as the church that he'd been, the church that he'd been a part of, and that this was just it was like a move into another stage within the same belief system. That's how he saw himself. And so the Eastern Orthodox see themselves as part of that exact same tradition. And so I don't remember exactly what, the podcast. So they, one thing that you find out listening to that, it's all like historical. It's like historical and philosophical, archaeology a lot. The one father is an expert on biblical languages. So like he studies like ancient niche Semitic languages for fun and like breaks down their grammar and everything. He's a total nerd. He said in one episode that he can like offhand just describe the entire universe mechanics for like 12 different fictional sci-fi universes. He's like that type of guy, but he's an Orthodox priest who's directed this into studying the history of the Bible and the biblical languages. And there's so many, especially the Reformation is built on so many. It's as simple as a mistranslation. It's as simple as just translating the word wrong. Like there was, I think like the word for atonement. Like they invented a word in English for atonement because the word that they were working with in Greek, there was no other, like they didn't have anything to compare it to. It was a standalone word. But what's funny is that word in Greek was the same thing. When the Greeks encountered the Hebraic record of atonement, that word that was used, they were like, we don't know what this means. We need to invent a new word for it. So now you're getting the game of telephone happening here. And so then when the Protestant conception of atonement now is built on taking a more modern misinterpretation and reading it back into the text and then deriving something new from it. So like there's so many instances of this where this happened. And this is just simple historical fact. This isn't a theological point necessarily.
No, I had this happen. I had a friend of mine who's wants to become Catholic, and his family is really against it. And so they actually planned to sit down, where they were going to have his family sit down and debate him on it. And he called me and said, Caleb, I want to come over. And so I walked in there with my books. It was a blast. The guy was a hardcore Calvinist.
Oh boy.
And he said, I have my Bible somewhere on myself. Yeah. He said, every time I'm in church, I pick up my Bible and I flip to what he's saying and I check every single word. I'm like, oh, cool. You use the Hebrew translation? No, I use King James. I'm like, well, who are you? You are the arbiter of truth for all history and all religion is to sit there and question. Whereas you have nothing. You are some dude who works in a mechanic shop and you're trying to read the King James version to question everything. I mean, the arrogance of this guy was insane. Right. He's like, yes. I'm like, what? How do you hear that and then double down? It was
and you ask him like, why is it that why are you using that specific book? Like not within the Bible, but the book of the Bible. Why did you settle upon that book? Why do you believe that book is inspired? Why is that book part of Scripture and not, say this other book? What would be a reason for that? And it's well, because that's the one that's been inspired by God. Okay, well, so which part of Scripture, which part of these 66 books was being used in 150 AD? Which Scripture were they sola based upon then? Because there was none.
This is something that I want to pause the letter. I think it was to the Corinthians. And he said, when you hear a new teaching, test it against what you've already heard. And so many Protestants take that to say, I'm the you in that equation, and let me test it what I've already heard. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, what if you got the wrong one first?
Right.
Like that's painfully obvious. And they say like, test it what I already heard. I'm like, but you might have got the wrong one. And they they have no way of removing themselves from their own life and actually questioning what happened. And they can't do it. And it's like they have no epistemology. They have no way of testing their own knowledge. I wonder this a lot with Christians. They have no way of determining what is truth. You're asking for like, evidence, and they have no way of determining a truth claim. And they always, when you confront them with it, you're like, how do you determine this one or this one or this one? You want to be consistent. How do you determine? They always say the same thing. The Holy Spirit will tell me. I'm like, I can't tell if the Holy Spirit's telling you. That is your out card. And if I argue it, I'm a bad Christian because I'm attacking the Holy Spirit.
Right.
It is a really, really frustrating out card they pull. And it's like, no.
You know what? That's very. So here's where this has been a big red pill for me. So there's a parallel to that technique that they're using. You encounter that technique on a regular basis. I mean, it depends on how much you debate politics with leftists today, but
I don't.
But that's a leftist technique. It's an appeal to subjectivity. And it's something that can't be countered. There is no counter to it. It's entirely subjective. So here's the big aha moment for me. So I said that politics and religion are the same thing. And it struck me that as you look back over the last 800, 1,000 years, what you see is a decentralization in political systems, right? There's a decentralization from the divine right of kings all the way down to democracy, where the fundamental political unit is no longer the king. It's now each individual person is now a king. You've atomized everything. That exact same process happened in the church at the same time, where you go from the church, the Catholic Church, decentralized all the way down to 1 trillion denominations. And the fundamental Protestant ethic is that interpretation of Scripture is like an individual experience. What they are is they're radical individualists in the context of religion. And so you get I can read Scripture myself and figure everything out is like a direct parallel to each I am my own constitution. I am my own sovereign actor. There's a direct parallel. So Protestantism is like Christian anarchism. And and anarchy is like political Protestantism. Those are two things that both happen in parallel. So once I started questioning one, I had to naturally question the other, because I'm like, there's no way that these things are happening independently of each other. And this is right around the same time that I got into Moldbug and understood like the Whig view of history and all of this kind of stuff. So Samuel Johnson said that Lucifer was the first Whig. But that's actually like, that's where Moldbug makes a really, really good case on unqualified reservations for order, as that the fundamental political distinction is between order and chaos.
I actually ask you about this, like the order chaos divide. I personally divide it into hierarchy. That's how I divide it, because it's like rejection of hierarchy and the acceptance of hierarchy. But I think the order one, the more I think about it, like you blew my mind when you said the highest form of order is self-enforced order. Was it you said that?
That was a Moldbug thing. Yeah,
that blew my mind. I heard that. I'm just like, my entire framework of like arguing for anything now has just been gone. It was incredible. There's so many things that Moldbug or Machiavellians or you or Pete or these people, when they say something and it's like, let's say it offhand. Like I listen to do you know who Peter Kreeft is?
No.
Peter? He's a philosophy professor at Boston. And he's a big Catholic dude, really, really smart. He wrote a 4-volume history of philosophy called Socrates and Children. It's in depth. Yeah, I'm gonna get it soon. And there's this huge debate going on in Catholic circles about lying. Is lying ever acceptable? Like, no, you shouldn't lie. What if a Nazi shows up at your door asking for Jews in your attic? Do you lie then? And everyone's having this really big debate. And Peter Kreeft offhandedly said, no, because you lose your right to truth in the same way you use your right to life when you aggress against me. And it's so offhandedly kind of just like,
yes,
solved it. I'm like, oh, wow, he solved it offhandedly, not even question. Like, you don't have a right to truth. You don't have a right to life. I'm not obligated to give you truth or life when you aggress against me. If you're Nazi, you aggress against me and others. And he just offhandedly solved it all. I'm like, when people do that, I'm blown away, because they're not even thinking about it. They're just that smart. They just go, boom. I'm like, back it up, break it down. I'm dumb, break it down real quick. It's awesome. Man, I love it when it happens.
The simplicity and the solution, there's something about that you kind of just know it's true as soon as you hear it. I don't know exactly how this is. This is where you
Occam's razor kind of thing, like
sort of, yeah.
Simplest. That's one thing Christians don't have as a definition of Occam's razor. Like you ever talk to a young earth Christian?
I used to be one.
Oh, well, I'm gonna make fun of you a little bit now. I was talking to a guy who's an engineer. He's talking about young Earth. He's like, actually, the universe is only 600 light years big, period. And he's like, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, all of science gets it wrong, and this one dude in a PDF got it right. I'm like, okay, maybe, but like, or like when they read Genesis, and you can read Genesis 1 has a poem written by Jewish people, and they create a poem, and it's like, this makes sense. They know it's a literal scientific document. I'm like, what's easier? What's more simple? Is it this one? Or is it that everything is literal and you have to read it in that one light? And they can't ever think of the simplest answer being it's somebody like in Protestant words, it has to be complicated or it can't be true. And it's a really, once you like simple things can be true, like gravity. Okay. It shouldn't be, it's not complicated. Things go down when you drop them. And they have to have these complicated answers because like they connect big words and long sentences with intelligence. I can have some breakdown the scientific history of gravity and why dropping in the central Earth pool and all that stuff works. So I can go, things fall, done. I got it right too. So who's smarter? The guy who explained, like, I can't remember who it was. They said the mark of intelligence is explaining something simply. They don't get that. Everything has to be complicated. Yes,
that's a. I mean, again, like we're on a spectrum here between I guess like you'd say like religion and atheism, kind of. There's like that, it wouldn't be religion and atheism, but that's the spectrum, God versus no God. And the Protestantism is philosophically, historically speaking, more on the atheist side of that spectrum. They're moving toward that because as atheism is something that was that concept was derived by Christians. Outside of the history of Christianity, there's never been a concept of there's no God. That would 99% of human history. If you would have suggested that there's no God, people would be like, Like, what's wrong with you? You're like, they would think that you're probably like mentally unwell if you said that there was no
It's
God.
like that meme. It's I can't remember what the meme is called, but it's like a flat end, really high, and a low end, and it's a dumb guy and a smart guy and a midwit in the middle.
Yes.
And it's like economics. People just do things. No, you need the equations. Austrians, human accent. You know, it's like that. It's like,
yes.
No, you need to have the Big Bang outside dimensional energy. It's like God made it. Thomas Aquinas, God made it. It's like there's something there about the simplistic answer and the really smart people are in agreement there.
That's my favorite meme that I've seen in a long time. I keep seeing it over and over again. The midwit meme. That it's an IQ bell curve, and you've got the smart guy and the dumb guy. Because it's like once you realize that human beings are not like rational creatures, that rationality is a tool that we use. But first and foremost, we follow our instincts. When you make a decision, when you rationally decide you're going to do something, there was something in your gut that made that decision for you prior to you saying, this is why I made that decision. So you make the decision emotionally, and then you create a rational justification for why you did it. The more that you enlighten yourself to the rational process, the better your gut will be. You're tuning your gut. But that doesn't mean that you're a rational being that's making decisions rationally. Once you realize that, once you recognize that, you'll realize things like the wisdom of babes. You know, like that little kids can be really, really smart because they're really in tune with their gut. They haven't had years of programming and the what's the orthodox term is the darkening of the noose, where you have
that's a good term.
The noose is like, because that's an actual. Within orthodoxy, there's I think it's the mind, the soul, and the noose, or something. I don't remember exactly what they have. They have a instead of dualism, they have a triad, and one of them is the noose. But
that makes sense given the Trinity. You know, the symbolism between that and the Trinity. I love Eastern Orthodox. The symbolism is like with Plato. When you read Plato, you're like, this is amazing. You may not agree with it, but it's amazing. Same with Eastern Orthodox. Even when I disagree, I'm just like, it's so beautiful.
And that's another thing too that I see is like when you see those patterns, the pattern that's in there, it's like once you start seeing the patterns mirroring each other, it's kind of like, I have to believe this. I can't not believe this, because these patterns wouldn't all be accidents. They wouldn't. It's not just coincidences. There's another similar thing with the Trinity is one of my kicks lately has been talking about individualism and the individualist collectivist split. And it's another red pill I've been gagging down. The idea that that communism and capitalism it's a false choice. It's a dialectic that is two wings of the same bird. Effectively, it's two means to the same end. These are just two atheistic, materialist systems that really are ultimately two routes of getting to the same endpoint, which is technocracy, which is basically merchant governed technocracy. So really the answer is neither one, but that's the same thing happens with individualism and collectivism. This is another false dichotomy. Humans aren't individuals or collectives. I've said humans, the word I'm using right now is tribalist, that humans aren't individuals or collectivists or tribalists, which is different. It's not collective for collective's sake. They're identified with their specific tribe. You're born into your tribe. When you're born, you're not born as an individual. You're born as a son or a daughter or a sister or a brother or an uncle or an aunt. You're born into these relationships, these networks, and those are the things that form your identity. You receive your identity from the circumstances into which you were born. And then you begin acting with that, but you were first imprinted upon by your surroundings. That's what you operate with. So I've said individualism and collectivism is a false dichotomy. What it is it's kind of like the Trinity, where is the Trinity one or three? Well, it's both. Yes, exactly. Are humans individuals or collectives? Yes. It's both. It's the same. It mirrors the Trinity. This is the nature of God and the nature of man. That man is fundamentally a member of a relationship, and that relationship, the family, is its own standalone unit. Like the Trinity is its own standalone unit. That's one and many at the same time. That's another parallel between the two. That I see that kind of thing, and I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it right now. When I see that, I'm like, I can't just poo-poo that. I can't just dismiss that as hokey or something. There has to be some truth in it.
Exactly. We have gone way over the time, it looks like. But I have been having so much fun. This has been great.
We should do this again.
Definitely. I'd love talking about this. This is one of those topics where it's like I get it and I can talk about it, but I don't know enough about it to argue it or defend it.
Yeah.
If someone attacked me on this, I'm gonna have no defense because I don't know enough to defend it. I had two more questions.
Keep reading. Yeah, keep reading and you'll get there.
Okay, I have two more questions. One, the whole post-libertarian thing. Okay, to be post something doesn't mean to be past it. So you have to go through it. So someone to be a post-libertarian, do they have to? How much reading in libertarian literature you see they have to go before they can say post-libertarian to critique it? Because someone who's like, I think everything you're saying is right. I see the post-libertarians are onto something. I'm new to this philosophy. I barely read. I'm reading Harper, Mises, and Rothbard now, trying to get through all of it. And I said, before I read any more Modebug or really get deep into this post-libertarians, I'm going to finish reading Human Action, Man, Economy, and State, and 2 more Harper books. What would you say is the people who want to read post-libertarian, want to get into this, have to go through libertarianism? What would be the short list of books they could get to kind of understand what libertarian is to be past it?
Okay, first thing that I'll say is I've been trying to decide how I feel about that term post-libertarian. I've hesitated to describe myself that way because of like you understood it the way that I would want it to be understood, that this isn't like moving on from libertarianism. This is moving beyond libertarianism. Like there's a difference there. This isn't I'm leaving it behind. This is I'm going deeper into it. That's the way that I see it. I see it as libertarianism is a layer, but I had to go through that layer. And it's actually not the base layer. Yeah, the ice cube meme.
You got to go deeper and deeper into it. It's
exactly.
Like, road to serfdom, democracy, God that failed. It's
exactly. Yeah. So I what I want people to hear is that I don't see myself as anti-libertarian. I'm not anti-libertarianism. I'm anti-libertarians. I don't like libertarians. But and that's mostly tongue in cheek because to me, like really, I see myself as I continued the same trajectory from that took me through all the way to ANCAP. It's like I just continued that trajectory. I didn't change direction. I kept going. So what I would say is I think you're on the right track. Don't abandon the libertarian works. Read all of them. I've read most Rothbard. I've read Human Action. I haven't read the majority of Mises apart from that. And I'm in the middle of Democracy of God That Failed with Hoppe. For me, a lot of it kind of came naturally to, like, not naturally, but it was just as soon as I started listening to it, my brain kind of just put it together really fast. Like I was like, I get it. I fully get this. I'm fully bought in. I understand the details of all of this. And I learned most of what I got through podcasts and reading books on tape. So there's people who've read a lot more libertarian content than I have. There's people, I don't think I've read any of Hayek. I don't think I ever read The Road to Serfdom.
There's no need.
Yeah. I mean, I've never read any Thomas Sowell. I read Economics in One Lesson.
Thomas Sowell,
Bastiat.
Conflict of Visions is one of the books I would recommend people read that want to get into politics. It's about the two views of humanity, the constrained and the unconstrained.
Oh, yeah.
And when he puts in those terms, it's just like, okay, I now know where people are coming from, and it's a very helpful book for understanding people's, even if they don't say it, you know what their goals are, because that's what the political philosophy goes on. So they may not actually know what that is, but a political system that's going for that end. And you can now argue against it. It's actually on, if you have Audible, it's included on Audible.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
and
great.
So it's
short
everyone go check it out. It's a good book. And the last question I had, would you say libertarians have to sell something that people want to be a part of? So $1 million question, what should we sell?
That's exactly the question that I'm trying to come up with. That's why I have my position against the LPMC is currently constructed, because I feel like they're going to market without a product, and I don't know what that product is supposed to be. I'm trying to get people's attention so we can try and figure out what that product is supposed to be. Basically, what we're looking for is what system of governance is humanity going to evolve to beyond republicanism, little r republicanism, because that's we're on the back end of that. It's going to be, it'll be probably generations before it's completely gone. Just like there's still monarchies that exist, you know, they're most of them are just like formal, but they don't have any actual power. But then this trend will continue. This is another thing as you read these books, you should get the feel that we have baked into us this sense of apocalypticness, kind of, that we're always in the end times. We're perpetually in the apostles thought they were
constantly in the fall of Rome.
Yes.
That is a very Christian mindset. The raptors always be waiting for it. The raptors always the next day away. You know, I mean, that has infected everyone's mindset. Even so atheists, they think this is the end. You know, Tim Pool, as much as I love watching him, he's so Civil War's coming, this is the end. It's all gonna end. And it's like, listen, my grandpa's been saying this since I've been born. He's been saying it since he was a kid. We're still going. You know, are we what we want to be? No, but the idea that it's gonna end in our lifetime is, I don't think, it's a very Protestant mindset, like the rapture's right around the corner, you know, and it's infected everything.
And if you read Dominion by Tom Holland, you'll hear people that are having this kind of conversation in like 800 AD. They're having this conversation in 1000 AD. They're having this conversation in the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s. Every single generation, there's this same conversation. Everyone has this sense of living in the end times, because, I mean, really, from a theological perspective, ever since Christ, we are technically living in the end times. It's just how long are the end times going to be? Yeah. This is I've been like, people have this sense that kind of like we have to go all out to fight the state. You know, we have to sacrifice ourselves because like we're right on the cusp. Yeah. Like we're right on the cusp. I
love Clint, but that was bad. I like him. He's great. He owned that neocon dude, but that was like, you don't know what you're talking about, and you're trying to speak their language, and it's like you learn two phrases from a book in an airport and trying to jump into Italian literature. You know, this is not what you should be doing.
Yeah. It's there's nothing to martyr yourself for. That's the thing. Without the product, you have nothing to martyr yourself for. I just did a debate with, it should be coming out in a couple of days, I think. I did a debate with Angela McArdle.
I watched it.
Okay, good. Yeah, what did you think of it?
I say you both did a great job, because again, I'm so what it means it's called, because I have the hoodie. I'm a dues paying. I paid money for it. I am a fan of the people. I'm in there because I like the people, which is my, like, going to suggest actually, is like the thing we should sell is community. That's my theory. People will die. People, if you don't martyr for nothing to martyr for, people will martyr for a community.
Yes.
And you need to have, I think what I'm trying to do is be fun. You know, I just did an episode with Scott Horn yesterday on Star Wars.
Nice.
You know, I'm doing I'm doing a Star Wars series. I'm going to do 1 month of philosophy books, 1 month of fictional books. I want to create a sense of community and fun. I want people to like, these guys are having a good time. Let's go hang out with them. And then they get the philosophy as a byproduct.
Yes, that's how you understand how society moves. Society follows the culture. And there's this thing where you got the iron law of oligarchy, you got the circulation of the elites, you've got there's a permanent elite class. Society always is broken down. This is the key insight of the Machiavellians. Society will always break down between the ruled and the rulers. And the rulers there will always be rulers. You're not going to get rid of them. Yeah. So the
hierarchies are always going to exist, even in family structures. The dad is the hierarchy. So if you want to abolish the family, you're not getting rid of hierarchies.
Right. And the abolishing the family is like number one plank for communists. That's Antonio Gramsci, the Long March to the Institutions, abolish the families, because that's where it starts. So it's kind of like, okay, so if you oppose communism, then maybe you would listen to the communists, and whatever they're trying to undo, you should do more of. That's a key insight. But so I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Community and
community,
family.
So building the community. I've said for a while now that the liberty movement is in business, education, and entertainment, because those are the three things that drive the culture. Those are, and really business is kind of number one, because education and entertainment are subsets of business. Anybody that's in the business of education or entertainment is in business first and foremost. So the ultimately the society, the way I remember what I was going to say, the way that the society moves is always going to be driven by the elites, but the elites get many of their ideas from the fringes. The fringes drive. This is a Thaddeus Russell observation, Renegade History of the United States.
Effective culture was like the Friends. Only prostitutes wear red. Then one girl went to high school, and then everyone's like, "Well, I want to be cool and edgy," and they normalize it. This is where leftists always at. When after that drag queen died, everyone's like, "I always support her." Well, where were you when she was starving to death and she had nowhere to live? You normalize after the fact. This is why I can't stand the left. Is the fake sense of like, I'm always for the little guy. No, what the fuck you want?
No, you're not. You're for whatever's fashionable. That's what you're for. Exactly.
I was arguing with somebody. It's like the people who wish you had COVID because of your political views, or wish you had AIDS during the AIDS situation. Right. These are the same type of people. They don't care about you. They don't. They care about how they look. It's all about views and projections.
The human beings themselves, maybe the individual humans may be different, but you have to recognize that humans. Carl Jung said that people don't have ideas; ideas have people. And you can think of ideas as actual non-physical entities, whether they are or not. If you think of this way, it's useful. Ideas are non-physical entities that occupy space, that control the society, and they're all in battle constantly for the society. And the people are just like pawns that move from one idea to the next. And so the goal of the idea is to read Moldbug's How Dawkins Got Pwned. He covers the idea of ideas, the whole meme idea. And like, how would you design an idea that would be like a virus, like a mind virus, that what you want it to infect as many people as possible without killing them? Because that's the goal of a virus. A virus's goal is to create as many hosts as it possibly can without killing those hosts. Because if it kills it, then it doesn't have a host anymore.
Yeah. So zombies are the scariest virus.
Right. So you can think of that too with the current thing that's going on. They talk about how, it keeps evolving. It's getting worse and worse. That's the opposite of what viruses do. They evolve to get better and better. They evolve to get less and less fatal because they don't want to kill you. So anyway, with an idea, if you were trying to design an idea to infect as many people as possible, what sort of idea would that be? What would its traits be? And what you find is just the natural course of evolution is such that whether you're consciously trying to create that idea or not, that idea will be created and it will infect people, and people will act for the sake of that idea. People will die for an idea. They want the idea to live longer than they do. We all have this idea that ideas are the things that you die for. So when you think of ideas then as actual entities themselves, I think there's actually a deeper spiritual truth to this. I just kind of it's kind of my intuition. I don't know if it's actually true, but when you think of ideas as being spirits that possess people, then you'll realize that the people who wanted people to get AIDS and the people who want you to get COVID now for political reasons are the same people. It doesn't have to be the same individual humans. It's the same people. It's the people who are occupying that role in society. It's moving for the same purpose. So I don't remember what got us down that track, but I know that I was working toward an
culture.
idea. Community and culture.
Community and culture, yeah.
Yeah. So ultimately, the elites pilfer from the fringes to get ideas for how they want things to be. And then here you go, Girard's mimetic theory. The plebs mimic the elites because all of us are driven by desire. We desire what other people desire. So we look at people that we want to be like and we say, what do those people desire? Well, I'm going to desire the same thing. And so then you get Girardian, his thing with sacrifice, because you get people who are close to each other who desire the same thing. They're the ones who fight. It's not people who are at disparate ends. Libertarians and communists don't fight each other. Libertarians and libertarians fight each other because they're right next to each other. We talk about we got to stop the infighting. Like almost every major battle has been infighting. Right. Infighting it's a major part of everything. And people are just like, we got to stop the infighting, focus on them. Like, they're not really a threat right now. When you say we've got to stop infighting, when you say that we've got to stop infighting, you're infighting. Yeah, that's what that is. So good point. The infighting isn't ever going to go anywhere. It's just it's an innate feature of a community. What it is it's a feature of an ineffective idea. Because if the idea was effective, people wouldn't be fighting over it. They would be directed by whatever is advancing the idea. So that shows you the lack of fitness in the idea of libertarianism.
The apostles never really fought each other that we know of.
Yeah, not really. They would squabble over certain things, but it wasn't
very, very minor.
They were mostly interpersonal things.
Yeah. So the idea of Jesus was such a powerful idea. They didn't fight about it, which is it's a good point. But when ideas are powerful, people are so involved and so into the ideas, they don't see the need to critique things as quickly.
Mm-hmm. So
point.
if you found yourself with an idea that you feel like you have to fight for it, there's something wrong about the idea that you have, because the right idea shouldn't require you to fight. You shouldn't need to. It shouldn't be part of the landscape. This is even a art of war observation that that you actually Cyprian Venarmani brought it up on the Liberty Lockdown interview. He said, if you've gotten to the point where you're fighting, something went wrong. You did something wrong. The goal should be win without fighting. So if you're talking about the biggest battle of all time, then Christ didn't fight.
Yeah,
he won. He didn't fight. He won. That's the difference. When you have the best idea, you will win. You're not going to have to fight for it. Now you have to act for it. You have to do something for it, but you shouldn't have to fight for it.
This is why, the more I read Tolstoy and the pacifist type people, the more I'm kind of getting into I'm adopting the idealism. I'm not a pacifist per se yet, but there's something about the idea of pacifism, who was it? I can't remember. Some documentary on Amazon about a guy whose job was to start revolutions. And one of the tips he gave, he was, when you write your signs, write them in English. Your neighbor knows what's going on. The news people don't.
Right.
Write your sign in English. And there was a rigged election, and these people wanted to figure it out. And a few of the guys like, let's get the guns and storm the Capitol. And one guy, the other guy's like, hey, there's a bunch of us. Just walk in and get it. They're not going to sue all of us. And they did. They just walked in there and got it. I can't remember where it was, but it's like there's something to the idea of when the ideas are strong, people are on board. You don't need violence. Right. Violence
I'm not trying to make a moral case against violence, because I don't really have a moral problem with violence. Violence is acceptable. Within certain, it's inevitable. The idea of property implies violence. It implies the necessary use of violence, because
the exclusion of other people through any means necessary if you're owning property.
Exactly.
There is something going to be violent in there.
Making a property claim is inherently a violent act.
You're saying you can't be here without my permission.
Yes.
And that requires an institution of some kind of force over that person to stop them from doing it. Because you could say, this is my property, but if you have no means of preventing them from crossing your property, then what good is the claim doing?
Right, right.
I was going to say, I think I'm in the same camp on the violence thing. I think I know if someone broke in my house, I have no problem with violence. So to my family, I have no problem with violence. But
yeah, exactly.
As a political strategy, it seems such this is why when I read the left anarchists like Emma Goldman, I enjoy reading the left anarchists. I think Mikhail Bakunin was spot on with his critique of Marxism. But when it came to the aspect of political violence, they didn't get it, And they really do you want to see the argument about martyrs not being a good idea? No one knew who these people really were until Michael Malice put the book out.
Right.
You got to be very nice to know them. And so we might want to celebrate them as heroes for a cause for something. But the idea they were accomplishing, we celebrate them because we know who they are. But either they accomplish anything in their death is laughable because they really did it.
In fact, I would go even further, and I would say that they worked against their own cause. And this is the nature. If you listen to Popular Liberty, he talks about archetropism and the way that that the state uses chaos to give itself a chance to impute order or to impose order. So when you provide them the opportunity, the state can't exist without enemies. This is why a state or a government and organized crime are always going to wind up becoming one and the same, but they have to remain as these dialectic pairs because they need the organized crime needs the black market. They need the state's laws to give them the black market to know, so they have the thing to operate. The state needs the organized crime to give the state a reason to exist. If a state eliminated all crime, nobody would need it anymore.
Exactly.
So when you attack the state on its face, when you present yourself as a threat, you actually work against your own cause if you don't have the power to overthrow the state. Because what they're going to do is they're going to say, look, there's a threat right there. Libertarians are domestic terrorists.
Exactly. I already said that recently. The domestic terrorists, like you're not prepared for this fight.
Right. So don't pick the fight.
There's that joke. It's like if someone's breaking into you, there's 14 guys breaking into your house, you better have 14 bullets. We aren't there. We aren't anywhere close to that. And I wish we were. I would love it if we were. I wouldn't love the violence that would ensue, but if we had the capability of actually being a threat, maybe that would postpone any actual attempt to violence. But we're not there. And to pretend that we are, it's like, yes, after the Afghans and the Vietnam people were able to successfully fight off, and they were able to postpone or fight off an invading force. The casualties of that war. Do you really want that here?
Would you want to live in Afghanistan for the last 20 years?
Like, look, like, they won. It's like, well, look at it. Look how shitty it is. Do you want that? Do you want that as your next door neighbor? No, obviously not. It's like Red Dawn is one of my favorite movies, and I love it. People really want to idolize that movie.
Yeah,
and
it's completely unrealistic.
They died, every one of them.
What that is. That's regime propaganda. That's regime propaganda to bait you into trying to embody that archetype. Because when that archetype exists, you've now given your enemies something to rally around. You've now created force that's consolidating them together. You don't want them consolidated.
Hitler needed the Jews. The I'm still other examples where I'm blanking.
Soviets needed the kulaks.
Yep. Catholics need atheists, or everyone needs to have. And even with Catholic and religion, if you want to get rid of all atheists, instead of everyone's Christian, you still be fighting against your human nature.
Right.
And there'll always be something to go against. You have to have a goal, because utopias don't exist, and utopia equals no problems. And if there's no problems, there's no people. So you have to have. It's always going to be problems. Always going to be conflict. And that's one of my reason one of the people, I can't remember who said, but like the idea of monarchy kind of appeared to me when it's like we're always going to have conflict. The argument is, what is faster conflict resolution?
Right.
And monarchy is one bullet. Hans Hermann Hoppe said, king might be bad guy. In politics, everyone bad.
Yes.
Everyone's
exactly.
bad. Everyone who goes in politics, is power corrupts, or they are attracted to power. So you get corrupt people no matter the cost. And monarchy, you at least have a chance of the guy not being bad, or having people around him who want him to be good. Like,
and if he is bad, it's very clear to everyone what the problem is.
Make him head sorter, as Hans Hermann Hoppe said.
Yes.
It really, again, these monarchy ideas, I'm like, I argue with when I first got on Twitter, I argue with a monarchist. I'm like, this guy's fucking stupid. And within 8 months, I'm like, nope, monarchist, where's my flag? I need one of those. I got an ANCAP flag over there. I'm going to get a monarchist flag soon, because once I love the ANCAP philosophy and everyone, the monarch, Hoppe, everyone, Rothbard continued Mises. We don't seem to think of Hoppe as continuing Rothbard. Like it's like it continues and goes deeper, like you said, post-libertarian. Hoppe really did continue. He wasn't a split from Rothbard. He was a continuation of Rothbard. And he read his own work about argumentation ethics, trying to be the is art gap and the natural law gap that Rothbard had a problem with. He is continuing. He's not splitting off from. And I think that's a very important detail when you read Hoppe and don't write him off. He is the next step. Monarchy
is private owned government. Like that's the monarch is a private owner of all of this property, and people live on it. And so because they live on his property, they owe him something. He says, in return for you living on my property and me protecting you, me providing you with protection services, maybe even providing you with a job, maybe even providing you with food, could provide you with all kinds of stuff. He's going to do it on his bill, because you're going to give him something in return. You're going to give him your fealty. You're going to give him labor. You're going to give him whatever. Like that's, if you want an idea of what this could look like in the modern age, it wouldn't look exactly like this, but it's just a thought exercise. Read Moldbug's Patchwork series. It's 3 or 4 chapters. They're fairly long. You can even go to the King Pilled YouTube channel. We did live readings on them. So we didn't just read them like an audiobook. We actually stopped and had commentary all the way through it. So you can just look up. Fun. Your live reading ones. I listen to those when I walk out. They are a lot of, again, I love your podcast. I listen to it a lot. It's a lot of fun. The connection between too many, because again, the atheist problem of libertarianism. I mean, too many times you listen to a libertarian podcast. So like, I feel like I'm just, everyone has two types of philosophy: religious philosophy and political philosophy. And too many times they're separate. You watch the Catholic like Matt Fraud or something. It's always philosophy, which is good. It's religious, it's theology, that's important. You watch Tom Woods, and sometimes you're lucky if he has a Catholic episode. But normally, if Dave Smith, it's always political news and stuff, and those are all important. You need those kind of things. But bringing them together is important, and that is what the goal should be: is to bring two halves into the whole. Right. And I think that's what your podcast really does a great job of, is it brings two halves to a whole. Good. I'm glad. I really enjoy it. Yeah, thank you. That's the goal with it. The goal is to show that really these two things are inseparable components. A church will always wind up facilitating the state in some way. They will always wind up as partners, the warrior and the priest, like you said. And a state will always inevitably create some kind of a church, because ultimately, like, the state exists in the realm of, it always has to do with law, and law is always inevitably connected to morality, and then morality is the domain of the church. So these things are inherently going to be connected at all times. So the thing with monarchy is number one, it just kind of, it makes pragmatic sense, sort of like when you reason through it like you did. There's that symbolic pattern as well, where the fundamental unit of the human species is the family. The family operates best with a strong male figure at its head. And the king is just like the father of a larger area. Humans are tribal. We're naturally supposed to be tribal. This atomized, like, broken off in little families, and even families don't live together. It's actually a product of capitalism and atheism that are hacking at the structures that bind people together. That's a consequence of materialism, is that you lose these non-material functions in society. But the natural arrangement for humans is, you have the father and he has children, and then his parents come live with him as they're retiring, as they're getting older. They come live, they raise the children together with the mother. And then the children, as they grow up, you don't just move away. Like, that's not normal. That's not normal to just abandon the rest of your family and go somewhere else. It's much more normal to remain in that area, and you have your own children, and the tribe grows from there. And you get this large tribe of people with a single patriarch at the top that naturally is the one that he's the one who's proven himself through whether it's war or business or whatever. He's the one who's risen to the top of the dominance hierarchy. And for that, everyone else bends the knee. They all show him respect. And in large part,
when he says when it's time to pray, he's the one who says the prayer.
Right.
Like, that's a big thing. Like, I've noticed this with Christians. When you show respect to someone in the Christian family, it's letting him say prayer. He's the guy who's going to bring the family's issues and family's worship to God through him. He becomes the middleman. The whole thing about pastors are supposed to be the shepherds of the sheep. When you have someone say the prayer, he is not being the guy who's bringing the message to God. And that's a scriptural model too. That's not just something that people just kind of do. That's something that's actually prescribed. It's prescribed that the father is the one who makes sacrifices for his family. The father is the one who represents his family, and in return, his family wears his name, and they go out as imagers of him. They reflect his brand. There's a fractal nature to this, because that's us. That's our relationship to God that we have. It's like we have his last name, kind of, and we are his children, which means that we are his property. We're the ones that he vouches for. We're the ones that when we go out, we have his name like imprinted on our forehead. So everyone sees, oh, you're part of him. You're part of his family. That's the model. This is the model that's existed throughout humanity for forever. And it's only been very recently, relatively speaking, with the rise of liberalism and atheism and secularism and materialism and positivism, nominalism, all these different isms that have arrived over the last few hundred years have all been undermining and dissolving and tearing apart these fundamental mystical strands that bind the human species together and that promote thriving and prosperity for humanity. And libertarianism is a grandchild of that ideology. Ultimately, libertarianism is trying to take this secular atheist perspective and take it to its logical conclusions. And in that sense, it's just a mirror image of communism. And it ultimately functions in the same way, as it becomes a suit that's worn by powerful people so that they can enhance their own power. That's what it is in effect. So this is why my goal is to take people who are libertarians for a good reason, for a good cause. They sincerely care about tyranny and oppression and crime and all these kinds of things. They sincerely care about that, and they want a solution to it. And what I'm trying to say is that you've got half the picture. Like you said about monarchy and anarchy.
what you're sensing is that there needs to be fewer rulers. Mm-hmm. There needs to be fewer people in position of power who have the ability to influence the world in negative ways without paying the price for it. You can't have authority without responsibility. Those are synonyms. Authority and responsibility are supposed to be the same thing. And what democracy does is it breaks the relationship apart. It breaks it down, and it creates a predicate for people in positions of power to remove responsibility from themselves so that they get the benefits of power without paying the price for it.
That is the two worst parts of democracy, is that you're not responsible for what you vote for. Like, what really, one of the big major red pillars on the whole, I joined the Libertarian Facebook group when I was still a Trump conservative. Mm-hmm. And I saw a sign with the stickers, I voted. And it said, I used a pen to, how to put, I voted for minimalist guns to enforce my opinion. And I heard that, I'm just like, shit. If I voted to outlaw marijuana or something, I voted for someone getting a gun pointed at them to drop a gun, drop something. That is, like, that's the worst part about democracy, is it removes responsibility from the individual and places it upon the guy you vote for. It's
right.
Like,
but then he isn't even responsible either, because ultimately he can blame it on his opponent. He can blame it on, an act of God. He can blame it on whatever. Right. That's the nature of the system. The system has evolved that way. Specifically, this is the evolutionary pressure that has created such an expansive state, is people trying not to be held responsible for what's happening because there is an innate notion that people having power is a bad thing. This is very new. This is a Christian thing. For the majority of human civilizations, power was worshipped. It was seen like, if you had power, it's because you deserved it. Now it's the other way around. Everyone's trying to not have, right. Everyone's trying not to have power now, but people still have power. They just aren't held responsible for it. So there's no responsibility for the voter, and there's no responsibility for the person being voted for. All of these systems have evolved specifically for the sake of corruption. It's people are invested in creating systems that remove responsibility from the people participating in that system, so that people can participate in the system without having to pay the price of it.
And the other worst part that I ask you, there's two parts of democracy that's bad: the removing responsibility and the making the other guy your enemy. You know, well, it seems to be better if my neighbor didn't vote. Like, I get it all the time. You're the reason the gas prices are so high. You voted for Joe Jorgensen. I did vote for Joe Jorgensen, one of my biggest regrets. And I'm like, I'm getting blamed for this. And it's like, this is the byproduct of democracy. Seems to be better if it wasn't for this guy. You know, you need to have the enemy, the other. I mean, a political party, the enemy is the other voting class. It's not the other guy in salt, it's the voters. Because the power comes from the voters in these people's mind. And so
the responsibility has become what do you call it? The tragedy of the commons. Responsibility has been lost to the commons, where everyone is all responsible, which it means nobody is responsible. When everyone's responsible, then nobody is.
So what's worse? Do we remove responsibility, or the fact that people hate each other because of politics now, and they blame their neighbor for all their problems? Like, I don't know what's worse.
It's chicken and egg.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, we have gone on for, I think, an hour and a half now. This has been one of the most fun podcasts I've ever had. It's also been the longest podcast I've ever done. You are the Jordan Peterson of the libertarian movement, and that is the best. That's because dominance hierarchy, and you go on tangents, and where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm following it, but I'm not sure I do. And that is exactly what you want, because there's enough there with like this seeds of knowledge that you have to investigate further. And that's what Jordan Peterson did great. So you go on these long tangents, and you're like, there's so much there to know. I have to research each individual part, and you get smarter along the way, even if it's just the words he uses. And so that's what you do a lot of. You go on these tangents. I'm like, I got to research that point, and that point. And along the way, I've now learned all of those things, and they go off with these little branches. And so there's Jordan Peterson of Libertarianism. Where can people find you at? Like, where can people listen to you? Where are you on Twitter? Just go ahead and plug all your stuff real quick.
Okay, I appreciate that, man. I take that as very, very high praise. I have a ton of respect for Jordan Peterson, and he's been a significant impact on me. And that's one thing I want to make clear, is that I don't know if anything that I've said here today is something that's original to me. I'm just regurgitating what I've gotten from other people. I see myself as someone who, I'm not an original thinker. I just like original people, and I like original ideas, and I try to consolidate them and mash them together and see what happens, see what comes out of it. And then I just want to tell other people about it, because I want other people to think about them, and I want the people who are better than me to go do something with them because I don't sometimes know what to do with them. I'm just like, well, here's this thing. Here, I'll put it out there. You guys, hopefully someone that knows what to do with it is listening and they can go do something. So I really appreciate that. And then before I give my plugs, one other thing I just wanted to say that I thought of while you were talking was one of the best ways that I ever saw this framed was by Moldbug. And what he said is that he is a monarchist because he does not believe that political power is a human right. And that's a key unspoken tenet of democracy. And it actually is present in libertarianism and especially in anarchy, which is that every single person has the right to have political power themselves. And that every single person, that's what it means to be sovereign. To be sovereign is to have political power, ultimately. So humans, as Christians, we know that humanity is not sovereign. Humans aren't sovereign. God is sovereign. So I don't have the right to political power. None of us has the right to political power. So to vote or to invest in a system or to try to move in a direction that gives me political power as a right, that's something that I deserve, that's a false move. That dog don't hunt, because individual people, political power is not a human right. Political power is something that is granted to people by other people in a circumstance where somebody needs something. And what that power is its responsibility, that you are the person we are entrusting with this task. Mm-hmm. That's the responsibility of a king. A king is supposed to be like a father. The father has power because he has responsibility, because he's the one who is ultimately responsible, because he's the one who's going to take ultimate responsibility. He's the one that other people delegate, or that other people will respect, will bend the knee to, will stand aside and accept his authority. This is the right and proper way. In order to get that at the macro level, it starts at the micro level. Individual people have to be taking responsibility for their own lives. They have to be putting themselves in positions where they are granted authority, and then they fulfill that responsibility faithfully. If you fulfill that responsibility, you have the right to be rewarded accordingly for fulfilling that responsibility. And that's what human rights are. You don't have a right until you have fulfilled a responsibility. Once you fulfill that responsibility, you get the right to be rewarded for it.
I got to push back a little bit here. That's why we disagree, because I do have an issue with the responsibility equals rights kind of thing. Now, I think there are inalienable human rights derived from self-ownership. And when I hear people say you don't have rights, you have responsibility, does that, maybe I'm misunderstanding it. Are you saying you don't have human rights until you have completed certain obligations as deemed by society around you, or that you don't have a political right, a right to power because you have not fulfilled the obligation? Because there's two kinds of rights here. There's like political power and human inalienable rights, like right to life.
Right. Okay. So I would say, I think based on if I'm understanding you correctly, I would say both. Okay. So what I'm saying with the responsibility and rights thing here is that when you say I have a right to this, I have a right to, sure, I have a right to life, or I have a right to possess a gun, to own a gun. Like it's a right that I have innately. If you have no way of protecting or enforcing that right, then all it is just words that you're saying.
Like property rights.
Right.
It's
exactly
because all rights are property rights in a sense.
Exactly.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And so a property right depends on your capacity for power. So like you can say I have a right to this property if somebody comes and takes it away from you. Okay, what does that mean? I have a right to this. Okay, well I just took it and I killed you. So now what?
Yeah. Okay, it's like I have a right to life, and someone comes and kill me. What good is me claiming I have a right if I have no way of, if I have no form of power to defend it? Okay,
right.
Okay,
so you have a responsibility to the people in your life. When you're born into, like I said, that network of relationships. Those relationships constitute obligations. That you have a right to treat those people in a specific given way, and if you do that, then they will. And there's a principle of reciprocity where if you treat someone well, they're more likely to treat you well. And ultimately, property rights are sustained by a community of people who all agree on a specific principle. That you own this property. They all agree on that, and they agree that we're going to respect your right to property. If people stopped agreeing, then you could shout to viewer blue in the face that you have a right to something, and they're going to take it away from you, and they're going to parade you, off and hang you or something.
Is this saying that your rights are not inherent to your own personhood? Are these rights now inherent to the people around you?
I'm saying that the rights are contingent on your relationships with other people.
Contingent. That's a good word. That's a good use of that word there. Okay. Yeah. I when you say it, like, it sounds like Burkean nonsense.
Yeah. I understand that.
I can't stand Buck. I absolutely hate the people like Michael Knowles types that is quote Buck all the time. I hate those people. And so when you say responsibility, I get that Buck flash, and I'm just like, hold up, let me clarify this, because if it's one saying, it's bad, but if it's the way you interpret what you're saying, I actually do agree with it.
Right. It means that for you to have rights, you can't just claim them. You can't just say that I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to have this thing. If you're a gigantic asshole who mistreats everybody and nobody can ever depend on you, then you don't have a right to have people stick up for you. So if people are coming to steal your property from you and nobody's going to stick up for you, you can say, I have a right to have this. Well, yeah, you're an asshole and nobody likes you and nobody wants to look out for you.
But you may have that right, but it's not going to be a fulfilled
but it's meaningless.
Right. Okay, right. So you may have a right to something, but it's contingent upon your actions.
And and so to me, to say that you have a right to something that can't ever be enforced, that it's meaningless. Like it's not a useful concept. It's not a useful term to say, well, I deserve this thing, because and actually, I think that it's harmful in practice, because what you get is a society now where everybody is all concerned about what their rights are and nobody's concerned about what their responsibilities are. Everyone wants to delegate responsibility to everybody else. Nobody wants to take responsibility for themselves. And this is a key thing that Jason Stapleton on Wealth, Power, and Influence has always said, which is that it's my fault. And it sounds like this may sound like hokey Tony Robbins something or whatever, but it's very true. And it's actually a key to unlocking the world to yourself. Because when you start from the premise that it's my fault that I'm where I am, what you're doing is empowering yourself. You're saying, I'm not here as a victim of other people. I'm here because I chose to put myself here, and I can choose to put myself somewhere else.
It's like
if something bad happens to me, it was my fault that bad thing happened to me. And I'm not going to sit around and wait for somebody else to fix it for me. I'm going to fix it myself.
It's like that speech. And you ever seen Rocky Balboa, Rocky 6?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So in the movie, he gives a speech to his son, and his son's a big business, trying to get big in the business world. And everyone, all he's known for is his dad was Rocky, and his son hates it. And one of the lines he says is, you can't get anywhere in life. I'm going to butcher it. I can't remember what exactly is. You can't get anywhere in life by saying, I'm not where I want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. And there's something like that's a great movie. Probably in my opinion, I'm gonna get some shit for this. The best Rocky movie is the one no one saw, Rocky Balboa. Gotta watch it. It's really good. If only for that one scene. On all this talk of family structures and family dynamics, have you ever done any research or deep dives into peaceful parenting?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I've listened to a lot of what's his name?
Patrick Smith?
Philosopher, no. French Canadian philosopher, bald guy.
Oh, I'm
just completely escaped my. Molyneux, Stefan Molyneux.
Oh, Stefan Molyneux. Yeah,
I've heard a lot of his talk about it.
Patrick Smith. He's a peaceful parent. He's a really smart guy. He has kids. He's a peaceful parent. I had my podcast a few weeks ago. I highly recommend the episode. He takes peaceful parenting so far. His daughter has leukemia, and they won't even let the doctors draw blood without her express consent. And they take it to the extreme. And I asked him every question under the sun that I could think of about peaceful parenting. Like, what did this happen? What is this hypothetical? How it is? Like, I went to the conservatives on Twitter who hate peaceful parenting and asked them, what is your best objections or questions? And brought them to him. And he nailed every answer. I'm not a parent, but if I was, peaceful parenting would be the way that I go. And I think there's a big thing about reciprocity in peaceful parenting. Is one thing I was worried about with peaceful parenting is that you teach a kid you're an individual who owns himself, and no one has the right to violate your rights without a reason. And the fear I had was that kids like that are going to think I can do whatever I want because I own myself. They're going to become egotistic. These kids are the opposite of that. The kids raised to respect property rights, respect other people's property rights. Like the kid learned what the F word was, and was just dropping F-bombs. And he said the F-bomb at another person's house. And the mom said, hey, you can't talk like that. And the kid said, I own myself. I own my mouth. I have control over what I can say. And the mom said, that's fine. You can't play with my son anymore. And the kid said, going home, kind of sad, and was like, but it's her house. That's her rules. I understand that. If I want to hang out with her, I can't use those words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this kid's like 12. You know, it's like there's something about the peaceful parenting and the reciprocity of self-ownership that is expressed in this kind of avenue that is really, really impactful. And they feel like egotism and self-ownership. Like you complain about, I have a right for this, I have a right for this. That is like somebody's complaining about self-ownership. Like, oh, you're just selfish because you have self-ownership. It's like, no, when it's actually explained, taught, and used, it applies to other people as well. It's not egotistic. It's communal.
Yes.
And it's very, again, Patrick Smith, you should have him on your podcast. It's incredible. It's Peaceful Parenting. I'll text you a link to my episode on it because it was.
I found the video just now and I pulled it up to watch later.
Nice. It's a good one.
The way that he frames that is, you notice he frames that from the perspective of responsibility. Mm-hmm. He doesn't frame it. He doesn't say self-ownership, therefore rights. He says self-ownership, therefore you are responsible for the way that you interact with other people. And those people may or may not respect your rights. They may not respond to you accordingly. But again, you own yourself. So you control how you respond to them responding to you.
That's the big thing he brings up, is that we never say to kids, it could make them feel this way, because people are responsible for their own feelings. Mm-hmm. And so you never say that could make them feel bad. That could make them, I don't know how you word it, but like people are responsible for their own feelings. So you don't want to say you are responsible for their feelings. And so he had to make sure his kids got that lesson.
Yeah, that's great.
He's a smart dude. He is on the ball when it comes to peaceful parenting. And just every part of it blew my mind. Like I went in kind of questionable, incredible. To do this peaceful parenting is, I think, the future of raising kids. Like it is. I have a
10-month-old that has been quite an experience getting to know him, and he's really coming into his own. I mean, he'll be talking very, very soon. He's like using sounds now. He hasn't actually got words yet, but he'll be talking very soon. And
that's awesome.
I was spanked growing up, and for the majority of my through high school, college, adulthood, I've been a big proponent of spanking until 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. And suddenly it just shifted. And my perspective on this is partly what was part of, like, when I was like deep into anarchism, I was viewing my child then from that perspective. Like this is he's his own individual human self. And I don't view him. I've kind of pivoted back from that, where I don't view people as atomized humans anymore. But from there, I realized that my job as a parent is not I'm supposed to be like his guide. Like I'm here to, he's a person, he's a human being. He's not, adults even are not, it's not like something changes psychologically. It's not like something changes in your, I don't know, your psyche or something. Oh, now I'm an adult. Everyone
the moment you turn 18, you're an adult. It's immediate. Right. It's such an arbitrary age. And not to get inside consent, because I think the age of consent to be 25, because that's when your brain fully develops. Yeah. But like this, if you say self-ownership, you can't say you develop self-ownership anywhere along the line. You have to have it from the get-go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the only argument you can actually kind of make is like he has the potentiality and the actualizer to aging. That's the only argument you really make, is that they have the potentiality for personhood and they actualize to the process of growing up.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only argument you can really make. But I think the strong argument is you have it from the get-go.
Right. And your job as a parent then is not to, your job as a parent is not to like be bigger and stronger and whatever than him. Your job is to be that, so that you can protect him as he figures out how the world works around him. We're going to unschool our son, because like our goal is not that we want to force him into being a certain way. We want him to discover himself, and we want to be there to provide, to protect him and to facilitate that learning process. Now, as I've gone kind of the monarchy direction and suddenly realized the importance of powerful, authoritative male figures as a bulwark and as something stable and secure that the child can measure himself to. I've realized I'm a little less of a hippie about him now than I would have been a couple of years ago. But I still will never spank him, because I've realized I don't think that I'm harmed from having been spanked. I don't think that it like hurt my psychology or anything, but I don't want to have that relationship to him. I don't want to have a relationship toward him where where he sees authority as something that relates to him in that way. I don't want him to. I don't have this thing where like, oh, kids need to be taught to distrust authority. I think that the exact opposite is true, and that's a whole nother episode itself. But there was one other thing that you had said there right at the end that I was gonna touch on.
It's reciprocity, respecting other people's self ownership. I'm blanking on the two now.
Actualizing
the actualization of personhood through you have potentiality, and you actualize your potentiality through the process of growing up. Using that.
Oh, I remember what it was. Yes, so it was that. It struck me recently while I was out. I go for a walk with him every morning with him and our dog. I push him in his stroller for anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours every morning. And he usually falls asleep in it. And so I'll be pushing him for a while, just watching him sleep and just kind of thinking, listening to podcasts, books on tape or whatever. And
books on tape.
Yeah, there you go. And it struck me recently that I'm understanding, like I watch him and I can like better visualize myself when I was that age. And as I think about stuff that happened to me when I was younger, I understand how it affected me and how it changed the way that I see the world. And it's kind of like I'm able to relive my own childhood through. I mean, he's only 10 months old, and I think my earliest memory is when I was about 10 months old. So I can see now what's happening. And what struck me is that it isn't that you become mature and then you have children. It's that children are an important process of the maturation process. Like if people who never have children never mature in a certain way, they remain perpetually locked as children in certain ways, in certain aspects of their psychology. So having children is actually an important way that you continue to mature as an adult. So that was just the last thought that came to mind. So I'll do my plugs real quick.
Wow, it's 10:17 and we started for me we started 8:30 and now it's for me it's 8:30 because of but yeah, we've gone for this has been a blast.
Almost 2 hours.
I love every minute of this.
I have two, man. This has been really good. We should definitely do it again. You can follow me on Twitter at @RealKingPilled. That's where I do the majority of my posting. And then YouTube, just King Pilled, all one word. For the time being, it'll be a podcast here eventually. And then you can also find me on Wealth, Power, and Influence with Jason Stapleton, another podcast. The episode posts out to everything publicly every Monday, but we do it live on Wednesday into our private group. We have a private group that we've created for people who are interested in liberty, but they're not interested in begging someone else for their liberty. They want to create it themselves through taking control of their own income and making that income mobile, and then attaching themselves to a community. There you go, community of people who are all doing the same thing, because this is where we believe the secret of moving the culture forward is going to come from people who pursue excellence in their own lives and maximize their own asset as a person, and then join forces with other people who are doing the same thing. So if you're interested in a community like that, you can go to mindnomad.network, and that would be the ways you can get a hold of me.
Oh, and for all the autistic people in the audience, because I know there's going to be at least two of you, this does not mean we'll just get wits, bro. Okay, there's like when you bring up money, I have to preference that, because like the whole get wits, bro thing, that was like I heard it. I'm like, I know what he's saying, and everyone else was like reacting to it. I'm like, no. that worked out almost. I couldn't have planned it better than how it actually worked out. It was partially calculated. Yeah, it was. I didn't expect it to be as big as it was, but it was designed to. Yeah. It was designed to be one of those things that splits people into camps, so I can identify who's my person and who's not. Yeah, like that whole thing. Like I get some of the people who are like, you like if you're being attacked, it goes to be to stop it from attacking you, not just to like I got some of the arguments they were making, but like that's just like a defeatist attitude to have. Yeah, it was so sad. Anyway, this has been an episode of the Catholic Libertarian Book Club with Taylor Brown, and my guest today was Matt Erickson. Everyone, you have